My name is Keston Perry, and thank you very much, everyone, and for the invitation. And Mr. Minister, thank you very much for your presentation. I had some concerns when I saw the budget presentation. To be honest, I was a bit disappointed from the perspective of youth, because in our interaction, we had given specific proposals within a context of creating an environment for youth development. Oftentimes, we look at youth as a problem rather than as potential repositories of solutions and a sector to which we must contribute and invest, in which we must invest. So, in particular, I took note of the program, that's the Youth Mentorship Program. And I saw the direct linkage between that and crime. And I was, yes, indeed, there is an issue with youth violence and youth juvenile delinquency. But I saw that there was this, in my mind, what was created there was some sort of, what I would say was some sort of, what I would say is the continuation, rather, of undermining youth to some extent. And I do take note, of course, and certainly congratulate you on the expansion of GATE and other programs. But I was particularly concerned about that, and little attention being paid to course fertilization in terms of youth and the elderly and youth and senior citizens, and how we can create that experience and youth and innovativeness, etc., as well as leadership and youth organizations, development of youth organizations to deal with the issues of crime and juvenile delinquency, as well as exposing you to new ideas and exposing you to the realities of further than music and the music industry and so on, but more to greater ideas and outside of our insular space. So that's what I thought, could have been paid greater attention to. Thanks.
Yes, well, if we did not inspire the youth, I am going to be very disappointed. Because I believe the entire approach has been to create a confidence for the next generation. In terms of the specific measures that we have undertaken, and as you indicated, there will be an expansion of some of the opportunities program for education. We did introduce something that I hope the young people would look at, and that is the new soft loan facility that we will start on a pilot basis for hopefully young people who will have ideas for commercial activity. And we'll support that with the business incubator system. So in terms of creating the capability to develop themselves commercially, that we have put a fair amount of programs in that particular respect. We have also indicated, as you said, that we will try to build in the entertainment, in the leisure, in the sports area, industrial complex, industrial component. So there are measures, but I must take heed of your point that you felt a little disappointed. I would give that some deep thought, because I do consider these consultations as genuine, and I will look further to see what we can do to excite the young population even more than what I thought we had done.
I just want to add to that, Francis, if I may, because in the Ministry of Food Production's plan for the next 12 months, we'd been wrestling with how we could encourage more youth into agriculture, because predominantly, if you look across the agricultural sector, you will find that farmers have traditionally been, and still are, of a certain age. And youth have never been actively encouraged to get involved. In fact, many farmers, if you speak with them, they will tell you, I don't want my children to get involved in farming. It's a fact of life. And we've been wrestling with that, and I will roll out in my budget presentation something I think is workable. I'll give you an indication. We're looking to ensure that a lot of young UWI graduates like yourself, who when you come out of UWI, there is no fertile environment, no enabling environment to allow you to get involved in active agriculture. What happens, you're either lost to the industry or they go into teaching, for example, but they've spent or expended 3 or 4 years of their life, which shows that they have some level of commitment in the first place to have studied for 3 or 4 years. We're looking at a way to try to get them involved because, of course, when they come out of UWI, they have the theoretical knowledge, but not the practical know-how, to get them involved actively on farms, and something we've discussed with the Agricultural Society, of practical knowledge whereby the government will fund some of that, the farms will fund some of that, and so therefore within 2 years you actually have farm-ready graduates who can become entrepreneurs on their own, in their own right, and they are the next generation of farmers who will embrace the technology that some of the older ones today are resistant to, and so on.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue with questions from our guests, as well as joining you, our television audience, with your questions on the telephone and text message. You can text your questions at 2623, and the number to call when we come back is 627-3760. Samson.
Thank you, Francesca. A lot of questions from the youth on pension. A lot more to come. This is CNC3's live coverage of the post-budget forum at the Ministry of Finance. Don't go away. An extra $1,000 to police officers, $2.6 billion to Tobago. We are analyzing the budget at the Ministry of Finance's post-budget forum downtown Port of Spain. Let me hand you back to Francesca Hawkins, who is taking it from here.
Thank you very much, Samson. We continue back now with our live audience, and let's go directly to the next question. Who has the microphone? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Brother Noblecan of the Interreligious Organization of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me first of all extend congratulations to the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance on their presentation of the budget 2010 to 2011. I would like to touch on particularly this new input that obviously is forming a prototype for budget presentation, where the question of partnership is being instituted. Obviously in the past this has not been so. But when I think in terms of partnership, I think in terms of genuine partnership, where we will have dialogue, where we'll have understanding, and where we'll have decisions coming about that are honorable. Obviously, the question in the past that has not been so, but there has been some form of consultation, a possible consultation that is taking place. I would like to see within the structure where we could identify this as being institutionalized in the budgetary process, and finding expressions in the bodies that will, with which this partnership will be formed. That is the capabilities of these bodies too, because you have mentioned that more than 100 bodies you have met with before this budget presentation has been finalized. And that obviously has influenced your preparation. But I'm thinking in terms of a sustainable element here in the past. And this obviously there will be need, because anybody who is on the ground will be aware that many of our NGOs, CBOs, etc., those bodies are not really up to strength as far as capabilities are concerned. And there will be need, I think, for at least government to extend systems so that this could be achieved. In doing this, what I would suggest most likely is that you may be funding or arranging for funding, but obviously not in the old saying goes, who pays the piper calls the tune. So you will have to have that form of, because once it is suspected by the bodies or by people generally, and we on the lower ground know that very well, once that trust is broken, I think the whole structure, you might have to resort back to what was before. So I would like to, if both yourself and Honorable Mr. Barrett, if you could possibly touch on that point of where within the budgetary process there are provisions for the sustainable input of the partnership particularly with respect of building capacity and abilities for the NGOs, CBOs, etc.? Thank you.
I think Brother Noble has raised a very, very important point, and as soon as we started the interactive sessions, we realized that this has to be a structured approach. And we invited the United Nations Development Program to send us some technical assistance in so doing. And they have devised what they call a democratic dialogue approach. Obviously, we could not introduce that for this budget. And they had indicated that the budgetary consultation process must indeed be almost a continuing one, not only one in time for the presentation of the statement. So I take your point. All I will say is that in fact, the report has been submitted on what we call a democratic dialogue process, which we in the Ministry of Finance will apply for the budgetary matters, but hopefully it will become a model for more consultation and dialogue. And I think you're very right that we have to build that capacity in order to make the partnership phenomenon real, meaningful, and credible.
Thank you, Minister. We have a question from the floor over there.
Good evening. Good evening, Ministers.
Good evening.
And my name is Charles Percy, representing the Energy Chamber. And I want to congratulate you on your first budget, which I think was well done. From the energy sector, I think that a lot of collaboration took place, and we have seen that some of our proposals have certainly been accepted, in particular the supplementary petroleum tax and how that will help the upstream is certainly appreciated. Now, we also like the focus on entrepreneurship and the collaboration. But only this morning, the launch of the Global Competitiveness Index highlighted the fact that we continue to have a challenge in our ease of doing business. All right, so the collaboration that we have here is fantastic, and it will certainly get all the ideas on the table. But one of the major areas for affecting the ease of doing business is the institutions that support business, the ability for businesses to operate. My question to you is, what do you have in train to ensure that the institutions that support business, all of them, be it the legal, be it the financial, whatever, when business people have to do business and have to interface with the institutions that make things operate smoothly, so that the same young entrepreneurs that we're trying to entice, that they will feel welcome and want to be part of all these incentives you've given them, what are we putting in place to ensure that those institutions will work seamlessly and support us to be the first world nation we want to be? That's my question to you.
Well, the ease of doing business has been identified as one of the objectives of the budget. A very small, but in my view, symbolic measure was taken. And this is with respect to small business, or anyone for that matter, who has to fill out a lot of documentation for the importation of goods once it's under over $1,000. Now, we thought that that could be a good symbolic gesture, because it means that the individual has to put in a lot of paperwork, and sometimes that results in his goods being subject to being placed in a warehouse and rent then becomes an issue. So we have changed that from $1,000 to $20,000. That will ease the business transaction. We have also looked very carefully at the indices for the ease of doing business. The number of transactions that you have to undertake in Trinidad and Tobago for doing business here, either in terms of registration of companies or also in terms of approval processes, is enormous. And the fact that we have scored so lowly on those indices you have spoken about is a reflection of that. So what I did indicate, that I specifically said, in fact, the ease of doing business is an objective. And the measure I pointed out was a start.